Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another video. Really excited to have everyone here for another one. Now, as you guys can tell, I am not in my home office, but even though I'm not in my home office, that doesn't excuse me from making sure that you guys get your content. And the content that we have been working on lately is our journey with Linux. If you have been following our videos, you know by now that we have been working with Vim for quite some time, and this is the next stop in our journey, especially learning about Vim. Now keep in mind, I mentioned this in the past before, but if you haven't seen our videos, go check out the link in the description. It's gonna take you to our playlist where you can get up to speed from where we are today. I'll be honest with you guys and let you know that our lessons, they build on top of each other. So if you miss out on any videos, you're gonna get lost very, very quickly. So again, go to the description, check out the links that I have there for you guys. There are links of the playlist so that way you can follow along and be all caught up. And then of course you can come back to this one and learn from where we are today. Now, while you're down in the description, make sure you check out all the latest and greatest information. We update the descriptions regularly with all the latest and greatest things that we're working on. And believe me, we got a lot of cool things coming on in the horizon for you guys. So in today's video, we're gonna cover a couple of things when it comes to Vim. And one of the things that we're gonna talk about is VIM Tutor, which is really, really cool. And a lot of people don't even know that it actually exists. And you can utilize VIM Tutor in order to learn all about Vim. Because as I always say, why recreate the wheel? Let's leverage what people have done in the past. So while we're in VIM Tutor, you're gonna learn all about moving the cursor, and it's really, really cool. I talk about this in the video. Vim was meant to be used with the keyboard, so you can learn all the keys in order to be able to move that cursor. So that's the first thing we'll touch on. I'll also teach you guys how to go from the beginning of a line also to the end of the line and what keys you utilize in order to do that. We'll talk a little bit about how to get to the beginning of a file to the end of a file, and there's special keys for that as well. How to insert text, how to delete text, and how to undo any changes that you've done. All these things are going to be covered in today's video. And by the way, I will be teaching you all really cool shortcuts that are not talked about in VIM Tutor, or at least I haven't seen them in the spots that we're going to be covering. So you'll also see that in the video as well. Now, before we jump into that, of course, you know I'm going to talk about housekeeping. So make sure you go ahead and give me a like for the video if this helps you out. Go ahead and share the video to a family member or friend so that way they can learn all about Vim. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you're notified whenever we upload to the channel. A lot of good content and a lot of good things to help you out in your journey. Oh, and one last item. As always, if you have any questions, maybe something doesn't make sense, feel free to leave me a comment in the comment section below. I do read the comments and I do make sure that I get back to everybody. So with all the housekeeping out of the way, let's head over to the desktop so that way you guys can learn all about the items we just talked about. Hey everyone, welcome back to the desktop, and a familiar place for everyone. At this point, at least, it should be familiar. So again, in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about some of those Vim commands, and I'm going to teach you guys how to do some basic navigation and some basic editing commands. So again, if at this point you are completely lost and don't know what we're talking about, make sure you go ahead and check out the description, as there's going to be links for our playlist. And it's always good anyways to check out the description because there's always good information and you stay up to date on all the latest and greatest. So with that being said, let's go ahead and go to the terminal. And by now, again, you should know where the terminal is, so this shouldn't be news to you. So we head over to activities, and then of course our terminal's on the left hand side, so let's click that. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Now hopefully this is big enough for you all to see. And again, thank you for my subscribers who gave me that awesome feedback. So first basic thing is, how do we bring up Vim? And we talked about this before. So all we do is type Vim in our terminal, hit enter, and of course Vim comes up. Now interestingly enough, people don't know that within Vim there actually is a tutor that helps you learn Vim, at least some of the basic stuff that we are covering today. And I'm not looking to recreate the wheel, so what I am going to do is I'm going to point you guys and we'll walk through those basic commands in that VIM Tutor. And surprisingly, a lot of people don't even know that this exists. So how do we get there? We do colon, type in help, and we'll hit enter on that. And this actually gives you an idea of how to go about moving around in Vim. Now, as you can see, the first thing is J is to go down, K is to go up, L is to go right, H is to go left. So that gives you basic understanding of how you can start navigating. So let's go down in the document so you can actually see VIM Tutor, which I'm going to point you guys to for this particular lesson. So as we head down using J, you get to the point where under basic it says tutor. And there's a 30-minute training course for beginners that teach you all the basic commands that we're going to learn. And the really cool thing is we're going to leverage VIM Tutor in order to learn those basic commands, and one of which you already learned, which is how to start navigating up, down, left, right. So now the question is, how do we get to VIM Tutor? And we figure that out by actually looking at the VIM Tutor document. So let's head there first, so that way you know how to access the document. So in case, as you're browsing this particular file here, if there's something that catches your attention, don't be afraid to check it out. In this particular case, we're interested in tutor. So let's exit out of here. And remember, we do that by :Q for quit. And now we're back in VIM. So from here, we can do :help for the help documents again. And remember, we were interested in tutor. So let's type in tutor and see what we get. And here we are by taking a look at the help document specifically for tutor. You can see here that in section 01.3, using VIM Tutor, it actually tells you how to use VIM Tutor. And the really cool thing is it tells us instead of reading boring text, you can use VIM Tutor in order to help you understand some of the navigation commands and some of the basic editing commands. It says here that on Unix, if Vim is installed properly, which it is by default on a RHEL system, you can start VIM Tutor by typing in VIM Tutor in the shell. And that's exactly what we're going to do in order to launch VIM Tutor. So from this location, we go ahead and quit. And remember, we do that by :Q. So now we're back to Vim. And again, we do the same thing in order to get out of Vim. So :Q. And we're back on our terminal. So from here, we're going to type in VIM Tutor. And we're going to launch that by pressing enter. And as you can see here, we are in VIM Tutor, which is really cool because a lot of people don't even know that this exists. And it says here that it's a very powerful editor that has many commands and too many to explain. But of course, we're going to talk about the basic ones today. Now, in order to make this easy, I'm going to run a command called setNumber. And what that does is it enables all the line numbers. So that way we can see where we are in the document. So now if we look at line 21, we can see here that it says, make sure that your cap lock key is not depressed and press the J key enough times to move the cursor so that way you go to lesson 1.1 and it completely fills the screen. Here we are in lesson 1.1, and of course it's moving the cursor, and this shouldn't be any news to you as we already talked previously of how do we move the cursor. But just to go and briefly talk about this particular lesson, again, H is to move left, K is to move up, L is to move right, and J is to move down. So let's practice going up. And of course, use K. So as you see, I'm moving up with K. Let's move down, J. We've already explained that before. Let's move to the left, H. And lastly, let's move to the right, which is L. And just a quick note, you can hold down the letter and it will do the function very, very quickly. So in this case, you see that I'm moving up and down very, very fast just by holding the letter. Now here's an interesting thing about moving the cursor. I'm going to go into some other tricks that I know about moving the cursor, and I'll be honest, I haven't seen these lessons in its entirety, so I don't know if it's going to be covered at a later lesson, but it's just based on my experience throughout the years where I'm going to show you some tricks of how you can move the cursor very quickly. And in the first case that I'm going to teach you on is how do we move to the beginning of the line very quickly. As you see, my cursor is on the E for line 34. And let's say I'm interested in going to the beginning of line 34. Well, instead of holding down H by going all the way to the left, we can press the number 0 on our keyboard, and it brings us directly to the beginning of line 34. Now, conversely, what if I want to go to the end of line 34? I could use L and hold it down in order to go to the end, but we can use the $, and very quickly, as you saw, we were able to get to the end of the line by using $. So really cool tricks on how to go to the beginning and the end of a line. Now, another little trick that I'm going to teach you here is how do you go to the beginning of a file or go to the end of the file. And of course, you can do K, and you can hold down K until you go to the beginning of the file, Or you can hold down J and keep going to the end of the file. But again, that is not very useful when you have a big file. So in this particular case, let's do GG. And GG brings us to the beginning of the file, as you just seen, and we're on line 1. And then conversely, if we want to go to the end of the file, we do capital G. And as you see, capital G brings us to the end of the file, which is line 970. So imagine holding the J or the K in order to scroll through all those lines of text. It doesn't really work well in that situation. And again, typically in Vim, there is a shortcut to make your job easier. So now let's go back to line 34 where we left off before. And by the way, that is another little shortcut. If you know what line you were at before, you can actually type in the line number itself. So in our case, 34, and then you hit capital G for go, you actually get taken back to the line you were at before. So another really cool way, instead of going to the beginning of the file or end of the file, where you can actually go to a specific line item in order to help you navigate a really large file such as this one, which is 970 lines, I think that was. Let's check again. Yep, that's correct. So 970. So let's go back to 34 again. And as you see, in 2 seconds, I was able to navigate the entire file. Pretty cool. Now let's head over to lesson 1.2 and see what exiting Vim is all about. Now here we are in lesson 1.2 and it talks about exiting Vim. And if we read line 53, it talks about being in normal mode by pressing the escape key. And remember, we talked about this in a previous video. So if you don't know what normal mode is, make sure you check out that playlist, and I'll put it in the description below, and the playlist will show you and talk about what normal mode is in Vim. So you should already know what that is. So let's skip over to number 2, which is line 55, and it talks to us about how to exit Vim and discard any changes that we have. And as you can see here, and we touched on this before, you can use colon, Q, and exclamation point in order to quit and don't save any changes. So let's go and practice that real quick. Awesome, and as you can see, I'm right back into the terminal. Let's go back into VIM Tutor. We're gonna set our number so that way we know where we are. Let's go to the line 34, which is what I remembered previously, and I know that that was lesson 1.1. So let's go down from here and go to lesson 1.2 again. All right, so here we are back in lesson 1.2. And funny enough, number 3 tells us how to get back into VIM Tutor, which we already did. So it brings us back into VIM Tutor, and we came back down to lesson 1.2. And if it tells us that if we're confident with steps 1 through 3 in lesson 1.2, we can go ahead and move on. And let's move on to lesson 1.3 now. All right, so let's talk a little bit about deleting. How do we delete text? Now I'll let you guys read steps 1 and 2, but as you can see in step number 3, it says that we press the X in order to delete any unwanted characters. So utilizing what we just learned, you can actually go to line 85, and we can use what we've learned in order to fix the text that we see here. And of course, we have a couple of misspelled words. So let's go ahead and put our cursor over C for cow, X, of course, to fix that. Let's fix jumped, over, the, and then moon. And of course, we fixed our errors with the cow jumped over the moon. Now, interestingly enough, deletion just talks about using X and lowercase x in order to delete a character. Now here's another interesting trick that I don't see in this particular file as of yet. It may be covered somewhere else, but I'm going to show it to you in advance, and that is the capital X. In order to show what capital X does, let's go ahead and add an extra O in moon. And we'll talk a little bit later on how we insert. All right, so now that we have the extra O in there, let's pretend that our cursor is on N. One of the things that you can do is utilize capital X, and capital X will delete the previous character. And as you just saw, we were able to use capital X in order to delete the previous character. Keep in mind the difference between capital X and lowercase x. Lowercase x deletes the character that you have highlighted. So in this particular case, on line 85, I'm highlighting the N right now. So if I were to use lowercase x, that N would disappear. And conversely, if I were to use capital X, it would delete the previous character. So in order to see that example a little bit better, let's head over to this lowercase o. and use capital X and see that it deletes the lowercase m before it. And there you go. Pretty cool on how you can use deletion by utilizing capital X and lowercase x. Now, another thing that you'll probably go over later on in this particular text, and I don't see it right now, but it makes a lot of sense in order to teach you this, and it's deleting a line. So how do we go about deleting a line? Well, we utilize DD in this particular case. So we press DD twice, and it actually deletes the entire line. So pretty cool how we were able to use DD in order to delete line 85. So at this point now, you've learned how to delete an entire line. You've learned how to delete characters by using lowercase and capital X. Let's head on now to section 1.4 and talk about insertion, or inserting text. So here we are in lesson 1.4, and it's all about insertion or inserting text. And in this particular case, we'll go ahead and, of course, go through steps 1 through 4, which is telling us, hey, we're going to use I in order to be able to insert text, and we have to make line 109 match 110. So let's head over to 109. Let's navigate over to there is, and we are going to put the cursor over T for text. And the reason being is because when you go into insert mode, it actually inserts before the character. Something really important to remember. So let me show you what that means. If I were to go into insert mode now, as you can see, if I start typing, the text is before the cursor. So in this particular case, we were missing the word some with a space, of course, so let's add that in there. And as you notice, I had the cursor on the T for text, and it started putting what I was writing before the cursor. So that's something very important to remember. Now, of course, missing is spelled incorrectly, so we exit out of insert mode in order to be able to navigate back and forth. And remember, you should know what insert mode and normal mode is. So right now we are in normal mode, and normal mode will allow us to navigate. So let's navigate now into the word missing. And remember, since I said that you're going to be adding text before the cursor, we are missing the S here, so we have to put the cursor on N. Let's go into insert mode. Let's start putting in that extra S. Let's put in that I, and then missing is now complete. Now let's go back into normal mode by pressing escape. Let's head over to this. And of course, we're missing the from, so we're going to go back into insert mode, and we're going to put our cursor on the T. So let's go into insert, and let's type in from space. This is set up correctly. And remember, we are normal mode again in order to navigate. So let's navigate right. And of course, there is the period there. So let's go into insert mode because our text is going to be before the period. And let's type in line. And we do that by going into insert mode and typing in line. And let's go hit escape to go back into normal mode. And now we have completed the line. So 109 matches with 110. And remember, you're using a couple of things in there. I don't know if you noticed, you have insert mode, you had normal mode, you had to learn how to navigate left and right, and you also learned that in insert mode, by pressing I, your text is going to be before the cursor. Very important. Now here's another little trick that I didn't see in the insertion section. And again, this may be considered an advanced feature, but I'll talk about it a little bit because it does have to do with insertion. Instead of using lowercase I in order to insert text where your cursor is, you can actually utilize capital I, and capital I will bring you to the beginning of the first character. What do I mean by that? So let's take a look at line number 99 where we are. If we are moving the cursor around, we can see that line 99 begins with an empty character, or a space in a sense. You have another one, which is another space. So I have two spaces or two empty characters. And then we start off with character 1, or number 1 in this case. And then, of course, there's a bunch of other characters. So if we look at where our cursor is now, it's on the capital M. If I were to do lowercase m, we can start putting in text before that capital M. So let me show you what that looks like. There's the hello, right? So let's go ahead and remove that. Now let's get out of insert mode and go back to normal mode. So you just saw what lowercase I did to that capital M. We were able to insert text before that capital M. Now let's take a look at what capital I does in this same scenario. Is you just saw capital I goes to the beginning of the first character. And we're typing in the same hello now, so you can see the difference. So pretty interesting what you can do between capital I and lowercase I when it comes to insertion. So let's go ahead and get rid of this. Let's exit out of insert mode. And now let's move over to lesson 1.5 when it comes to appending. So here we are in lesson 1.5 and it talks all about appending. So if you read all the steps below, steps 1 through 4, you can start working on correcting lines 132 through lines 135. So let's head over to 132. So 132, capital G, in order to get us there. And remember, these are all tricks that I'm teaching you that is not included in this. So make sure you pay attention to those. Now we're going to use capital A like we see in step number 2. And what that does is it takes us automatically to the end of the line and it puts us in insert mode automatically from normal mode, which is pretty cool. Right? You're saving yourself the time of having to scroll all the way to the right and then go into insert mode and then get ready to type. So in this case, we can type in IS for this, space, and then LINE for line, period. And let's escape out of insert mode to go back into normal mode to be able to navigate. And just like that, in 2 seconds, we fixed line 132. Let's head over to 134. Now in that particular case, it may have been easier to use J to go down 2 times instead of typing 134 in capital G. Remember, the goal of Vim is to use as little typing as possible. You want to be very efficient. But sometimes with muscle memory, you just do things automatically. So let's go ahead and practice again. Let's use capital A in order to get us to the end of the line and go into insert mode automatically when in normal mode. So ING in order to fix missing, space, HERE, period, in order to fix line 134. And now that we're done with that, we can escape and we're back into normal mode in order to navigate. And that fixes our problems between line 132 and 135. Now just to reiterate, I haven't really worked with VIM Tutor too much in the past, so I don't know if later on they'll teach you some other tricks on how do you go about appending, but there are 3 other things that I want to teach you when it comes to appending. You just learned capital A. Now let's talk a little bit about lowercase a. Capital A will take you to the end of the line and automatically put you in insert mode so that way you can start typing. Let's see what lowercase a does. I don't know if you guys caught that or not, but let's talk a little bit about it. We had the cursor on capital T on line 132. And by pressing lowercase a, it actually put us in insert mode, and it actually puts us in insert mode in the next character, which is H. Let's practice that again. We are on capital T on line 132. Let's hit lowercase a, and as you can see, I'm in insert mode for the next character. So if I wanted to add the, followed by a space and a T, I essentially added the word the before there. Kind of interesting on what lowercase a does, and you may be saying to yourself, why would I even use that? There may be situations where you may not want to go to the end of the line, or maybe you need to add text before a particular character. And lowercase a will be the trick to get you there. So in this particular case, we've added the word the, we added a space, and we also added a lowercase t. What if we want to go back to the way we had things before? And it's something I haven't seen covered in the lessons that we discussed so far. So I'll touch on it briefly right now, and that is undoing changes. So right now we are in insert mode, and if I were to escape insert mode and go back into normal mode, if I were to press lowercase u on the keyboard, it actually reverts our change back to what we had before. So pretty cool how you're able to revert any changes that you did just by using lowercase u. Undoing changes may be covered at a later topic, but I did want to introduce you to that right now because I do think that that's something very important as you're working on inserting characters or appending. Undoing something because you made a mistake is absolutely very important. Two last items that I want to talk about when it comes to inserting text. We just talked about appending text to the end of a line, and we just showed you how to append text after a specific character using lowercase a. What if I wanted to add a new line and I wanted to go into insert mode and start typing away? So in this particular example, we're on line 133. I can go ahead and type capital O. And capital O, as you see, brings me a line above, and it puts me into insert mode so I can immediately start typing. So I can go ahead and start typing and say there is some text missing from this line. And really cool how I was able to use capital O to insert a blank line above, go into insert mode, and immediately start typing. Let's go ahead and remove this change, and remember, we can do it in a couple ways, and this is one of the things that I love about the Linux world. There's multiple ways to solve the problem. Either you can get out of insert mode, which puts us in normal mode, just as you see. You can either do DD to delete the line, or you can use U in order to undo the changes that you had from before. So two ways in which we can accomplish the same thing. Very cool. Now conversely, as you saw how we put a line above, we can do the same thing below, and again we're on line 133, and we can use lowercase o. And just like that, we are in line 134 now, and we're in insert mode, and you can go ahead and start typing. There is some text missing from this line, period. And very cool how you were able to go ahead and insert that line below by using the lowercase o. Now, conversely, from the other example that we ran before, let's go ahead and exit insert mode and go into normal mode. And now, instead of using U for undoing the changes, let's do a DD to delete the line. And as you see, it accomplished the same thing as before. So again, multiple ways to solve the problem, which is really, really cool in the Linux world. How does that saying go? You can skin a cat in multiple ways. So this is a lot of information in order to do basic navigation and do some editing commands. So at this point, I want you to go ahead and practice what you have learned up until this point. Make sure you go ahead and leave me comments if you are unsure of what we discussed today. I do check those comments and I always answer them. And remember, check out the description, as we always update our descriptions with all the latest and greatest information. So go ahead and have some fun editing this particular file. And remember, we've made some changes to this file, so we're not interested in saving those changes, and we've discussed how we get rid of those changes, because at this point, if we were to use :Q for quit, we're gonna get an error saying, hey, you didn't save those changes. Are you sure? And if you are sure, go ahead and overwrite by using that exclamation point. So let's go ahead and do that. And we've exited out of VIM Tutor. So welcome back, everyone. By now, you should know all there is to know about VIM Tutor, at least from getting started perspective, right? We looked at all the help documents, how you access VIM Tutor. More importantly, you learned a lot of really cool commands. Keep practicing those commands because, again, they don't come natural in the beginning. You're gonna mess up, you're not gonna be that great, but once you get it, you're gonna be a pro. So real quickly, you learned about moving the cursor from the beginning of a line to the end of a line. You learned how to move from the beginning of a file to the end of a file. You learned how to insert text. You learned how to delete text. And you learned the undo command, which was pretty cool as well. As you saw in the video, make sure you're understanding what normal mode is. Make sure you're understanding what insert mode is. And again, if all of this stuff sounds foreign to you, go back and watch my other videos as we covered those topics. And as always, if something is not making sense or you just genuinely enjoy the content and it's helpful, go ahead and leave me a comment in the comment section below. So that'll do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for subscribing to the channel and turning on the notification. Also as well, thank you for giving me a like for the video if it helps you out. And lastly, thank you for sharing the video with a family member or friend, so that way they can be introduced to our channel as we talk all things engineering, tech, and finances. I have to get going. There's a couple things that I have to take care of on my end, but I will see everyone in the next video.